Well, how's it going, everyone? Hope you had a good or are having a good lunch. I'm just finishing up a session earlier from a chapel service over at Grace this morning, and it was a really good time. You know, um, Being there this morning, I was reminded that it's 3 months ago today that I had the surgery on my leg, and what's really amazing for me is that the 3 months has come and gone so quickly. And thankfully, no pain still, but there is still some numbness, at the top of my foot and some issues with my ankle, not being able to really uh, get rid of the swelling, that kind of stuff. But nonetheless, God has been good. And I'm thankful that I can be as mobile and as functional as I have been, and so that's a blessing. So just want to say thanks to everybody for your prayers and for your concern for me over the last several months, weeks. Everything really is progressing along very well, so I appreciate that. And I want to just kind of give a recap of our sermon from this past week and maybe get some thoughts and comments from you guys about some things. We just started a new series called Greater. And um, part of the reason for this for me is to be reminded how much greater God is, and to be mindful of His goodness and greatness to me individually, which kind of takes me to some of my quiet time this morning. Um, I don't know, all of us may have different routines or things that we do when we're spending time with God. And for me, over the years, I've always done like a written quiet time. And so I have journals and things that go back all the way to high school, really. So I have tons of journals. And now I'm trying to do one more electronically, so that's been a little bit of a shift for me, going from a handwritten journal to an electronic, either typing and texting to using a digital pen. But some of the stuff that I was getting from my quiet time this morning that I thought I would share with you guys, um, and it kind of goes along with our sermon from this past week too, talking about how God is greater. So I want to ask you this question: like, how do you feel like God's greatness has been demonstrated in your life? Like, even for me, just personally, with this injury, being able to get back and be kind of where I'm at after 3 months demonstrates God's great power, His healing ability, His goodness and blessing in my life, and so that just again reminds me of how great and awesome He is because of His ability to do such things and to answer our prayers and all of those things. Not to mention that there is no other God, which obviously makes Him greater. But how about you? How have you seen the greatness of God in your life? One of the things that I was reading this morning, we go through a Bible reading program with our church, and um, today it was in Psalm 73, verses 1 through 3, and it says, God is indeed good to Israel, to the pure in heart. But as for me, my feet almost slipped, my steps nearly went astray. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking, how many times has God protected us, right? Not just from harm, not just from other people, but even from ourselves, right? That God, in His graciousness and in His grace and mercy toward us, sometimes He is the one that's protecting us and keeping our feet from slipping. He's the one that's keeping us from making poor or bad decisions, and sometimes, let's be honest, He has just in His grace kept us from certain consequences. Um, and the passage goes on and it says, "For I envied the arrogant, I saw the prosperity of the wicked." You know, it is difficult sometimes, isn't it? Whenever we see everyone else prospering, who are not Christians or followers of Jesus, and you're just like, dang, why? How is it that their life is so good, and it seems like, I'm struggling. The struggle is real, right? For real, for real. But it says, that the writer of this, he says, "For I envied the arrogant." And what he was doing was he was comparing himself, and looking at what other people and how other people were succeeding or prospering. And what that does is, right, comparison kills. Comparison kills. And especially if you're comparing yourself to the wrong things. The One of the cures for comparison is contentment. And it's important for us to learn contentment. Even Paul said, "For I've learned to be content," right? And so we have to look at things differently. We don't live in this time and focus with prosperous things on earth. We have to look at things in light of eternity. ILOE, right? I say that a lot. In light of eternity. So the focus has to be for us as followers of Jesus not to compare what we have against what we are going to get. We are going to be rewarded differently on earth as well as in heaven, right? Our blessings are not always going to be prosperous in the sense of finances or some kind of material blessing. We are going to be rewarded spiritually. We're going to be rewarded sometimes. It could be monetarily or in some other physical blessing. But ultimately, our rewards are going to come from God in heaven. And so what the writer, I think, here and the admonition to all of us is to make sure that we do not fall into the trap of envying what other people have, and remembering that our blessings are going to come later. Um, it says, again, to go back, God is indeed good to Israel, to the pure in heart. So it's important for us to check our motives. Why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we feel like we should get something else? Because ultimately, God is good to us anyway. If we're His followers, God's going to meet all of our needs. So don't be envious, and don't get focused on the wrong things, right? Um, so how about you? When you think about those verses, right? Psalm 73, 1 through 3. What are some principles that we can extract, from this passage? One thing that I would say is that let's not ignore how good God has been to us. Isn't it easy that when we see something that someone else has, that we think, well, why don't I have that? Or why can't I have that? And so what do we want to do? This is why there's so much credit card debt. So morning is that, he or distrust God and His goodness. And so it's important for us to be aware of that and to be careful of that, because obviously Satan wants to distract us by any number of things, uh, anything to keep our attention from being on the Lord. So pay attention to that in your own life, and how it is that the things of this world are tethering us to this world. It's important for us to unearth. And this concept I like to talk about sometimes is, what does it mean for us to unearth? How do we set our affection on things above, not on things of this earth? Colossians chapter 3, right? So anyway, give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. And remember, your God is greater. Our God is greater. He is worthy of our worship. Hope you guys have a great afternoon. We'll see you later.